in less than 3 months, our great government will be out of money. It'll be broke. Unless we reach some kind of a bipartisan budget agreement, our nation will face yet another ridiculous and damaging government shutdown. Now, my friends, the Republicans, are aware of this. As you will remember, government was closed for a couple of weeks. And in the House, over here it was a little better, but not a great deal better. In the House, 2/3 of the Republicans voted to keep the government closed. Can you imagine that? So when we talk about a government shutdown, we're speaking from experience how they operate. The new Republican majority has ignored upcoming deadlines and neglected to address urgent problems facing our nation time and time again. They've governed through a series of last-minute, manufactured crises that increase uncertainty and increase unnecessary and wasteful costs to our government. And all of them hurt very much the middle class. Another Republican-imposed crisis can and should be avoided. Now, you just don't need to take my word for it. I'm sure you would, but let's say you don't take my word for it. Let's look at the New York Times today. And I quote, "Senior House Appropriations Committee members, including the panel's chairman, Republican Harold Rogers of Kentucky, have already told Republican leaders that the time to negotiate a way out of the impasse is now, not in the shadow of the Pope's visit or a government shutdown on October 31st. And senior Congressman Tom Cole, who's had a number of leadership positions in the House, quote, "The reality is we still live in a divided government, and it's not as if the Democrats can be shut out. But they can't dictate to us any more than we can dictate to them. It's time to sit down and work out some kind of a deal." That's what we're saying. But the Republican leadership has shown no interest whatsoever in compromise. We've urged them to come to the table. The president's ready, willing, and able to visit with them and us, but we need to get this done. To continue any longer is certainly a disaster for our country, and it's one of those things, it's a disaster created by my Republican friends. Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Senator Reid. At the end of June, the Export-Import Bank went out of business. America is now losing jobs across our nation from firms that export that don't have the help of that bank. This was a Republican plan to manufacture a crisis when it came to exports that cost American jobs. On July 31st of this month, the temporary extension of the Highway Trust Fund will expire. The Republican leadership has failed when it comes to the highway infrastructure of America and the hundreds of thousands of jobs that are connected with the infrastructure building that is absolutely necessary. And now we see the reality that there is another crisis looming created by the Republican leadership. On a clear day on Capitol Hill, you can look in the distance and see coming toward the Capitol the train government shutdown. It's pretty clear, due to arrive September 30th. Now, if Speaker Boehner and Majority Leader McConnell are counting on the Pope to deliver a miracle when he arrives in Washington in September to save them from their own fate, I don't know that their prayers are going to be answered. I hope the Pope will save his miracles for more important things. But let them roll up their sleeves and get to work now. Let's not wait. We have 8 weeks of session before the end of September and the end of the fiscal year. If Majority Leader McConnell believes that we can just wait through this month of July and somehow miraculously get this done in September, he's wrong. We should start now, as Republican leaders in the House are calling for, with the meetings necessary to reach an agreement on our budget that's good for the building of jobs in America.
Sure.
Well, the writing on the wall has been there for months, but it seems that now, finally, some Republicans are actually starting to read it. Yesterday, the New York Times reported that senior members of the Appropriations Committee, including Chairman Rogers, are urging their leadership to sit down with Democrats now and head this off at the pass. Our message to those Republicans is simple. Our door is open. Massive cuts hang over our military and key middle-class programs like an anvil, waiting to crush our economy in the fall if we don't come together and work on an agreement. Democrats don't want to wait until we're right on the edge of the cliff. We want to get started on those negotiations now, right now. More and more Republicans are starting to agree. The only thing standing in the way of these negotiations now are the Republican leaders. We are asking House and Senate Republican leaders to heed the call of the better angels in their caucus, instead of letting those on the hard right take us closer and closer to brinksmanship. They should have learned their lesson in the last few years that won't work. Hopefully they're learning it. If we don't start now, we're going to wind up in the most predictable budget crisis that we've ever seen. The path forward is clear. It does not run through failed votes on bills that underfund the military with gimmicks and slash middle-class programs. It does not run through trying to force presidential vetoes. The only path forward runs through bipartisanship, and both parties working together to come to a budget agreement. We've done it before. It's time we do it again.
Senator Murray.
Well, we are running out of time, and there really is no reason for Republicans to wait any longer. If Republicans refuse to sit down with us now, if they continue to stay in a partisan corner, then they are going to push us to the brink of another completely avoidable budget crisis. If they stick with their partisan approach and spend the next few weeks pushing appropriations bills that have no chance of becoming law, they will be bringing us right back to the bad old days of countdown clocks and constant crises. They have a chance to avoid the mistake they made in 2013. Democrats are at the table. We are ready to go to work. And as you heard, we are now hearing from Republicans who are also pushing their leaders to start negotiations on the budget now and work with us to get this done. Because we all know that the issues facing Congress in the coming weeks and months, we know the deadlines that are coming, and we know that they cannot be addressed by one party alone. We proved in 2013 that we can get in a room and work together and reach a bipartisan budget deal. We should absolutely be able to do that again. So we're calling on Republican leaders to join us in negotiations as quickly as possible. We are ready to get to work. We have made that very clear. It is now up to Republican leaders to join us.
Questions?
Senator Reid, do you think Congress should give Puerto Rico the ability to declare bankruptcy?
I personally feel that we should do everything we can to help the people of Puerto Rico be pulled out of the morass they're in.
Senator Reid, you talked about your meeting with President Obama last night and what he wants to see from you guys and see from Congress moving forward the rest of the year.
I'm not going to talk about what went on at the meeting other than to say it was a very fine meeting. All my caucus was there. Questions were asked. The president candidly answered those questions. It was a very nice meeting. Yes.
Has become controversial Republican candidate for president with his comments recently about immigration. Have you heard those comments? Do you have any reactions to his comments about illegal immigrants in the United States?
I've heard the comments. They're distasteful, disgusting. And frankly, I'm terribly disappointed that my Republican colleagues here in leadership positions in the Senate and those running for president have basically kept their mouths shut. I think that's unfortunate, and I think that speaks of where the Republican Party is today.
Senator Reid and perhaps also Senator Schumer, since you were involved in the International Tax Working Group. Senator McConnell just said that he was skeptical of pulling out any sort of tax reform to pay for a highway bill. Do you have any?
I know what he said, and here's how I feel about this. I have heard for a decade about comprehensive tax reform, and until we get that, we're going to get nothing done. If we can get something that there's work being done by a senior Democrat here in Senate and Senator Ryan, and if they can come up with something in international taxes to help us fund the highway bill, more power to them. I'm totally in favor of that. Yes. Signable bill.
A signable bill? Look, I think we've made tremendous progress since the beginning of the year when the Republicans put out a very partisan bill. We've made a lot of improvements in it. We're going to have a really good debate on the floor. There's going to be amendments offered on both sides. The House is moving their bill, and the White House is very engaged. I think that we have I hope a good chance to continue that bipartisan cooperation. There isn't any parent, any teacher, any business leader, any CEO, moms I run into in the grocery store who don't tell me the current law is broken and needs to be fixed.
One final question.
On the highway bill, Senator McConnell said he'd like to bring that up after the education bill's work is completed next week. Do you
I'm sorry, who would like to bring it up?
Senator McConnell would like to bring up the highway bill next week after education?
He said that? Well, more power to him. Let him bring it up. I just hope that he understands that we will find disgusting and very offensive to what's good for our country if he brings forward the 34th short-term extension of this. That would be awful for the country. We have, as Senator Durbin has said, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs depending on a long-term highway bill. And a short-term extension doesn't help us at all.
And we're waiting for his plan. We've been waiting for months for Senator McConnell to tell us what his plan is. What is it? And can it get bipartisan support? Can the president support it? We've been talking about something, tax reform, that might get done. What's his alternative? We haven't heard a thing.
That answers my follow-up, which was, do you believe that there are bipartisan pay-fors or any pay-fors that exist right now that get you to a 6-year bill?
We are not going to determine that right here. It's up to the Republican leader to come up with something. He has never ever said a word publicly about how he wants to fund a long-term highway bill. Maybe he's done it in private, but he certainly has said nothing to the American people or nothing to the Democratic or Republican caucuses that I'm aware of. Thanks, everybody.